you know? So it's, I think in reconnecting, like you said, this is a reset. I used to always garden, you know, I grew up gardening. I grew up growing food. You know, my family has very humble roots in farming and in growing food. So I feel like I'm really feeling my ancestors, you know, like right here with me lately while I'm planting these seeds and doing that. And that's been a really good reset at this point in my life of like who I am. And, you know, it's like, I'm doing music. I'm being a mom, I'm being a wife, but it's like, I'm also like, you know, little farmer, little gardener, you know, all these things, you know, I'm trying to heal in as many ways as I have the capacity.
It's like Laura Reed, medicine woman. Like, seriously.
It's fun. Yeah, it's funny. Well, except, you know, I beat myself up. I was showing you earlier, like I slice the thumb. I'm always hurting myself, but you know,
so
comes with the territory.
Yes. So if somebody, including myself, you're teaching me, but if somebody said, I don't have space, but I'm going to do a little, you know, small inside garden, right, in the kitchen, or they're going to be outside, give us like your top 3 little secrets or tips for reconnecting, getting in the garden, like, and for a newbie, because there's a ton of people out there. I'm a newbie. You're teaching me. I'm saving my compost. I'm doing all these things. Give me a couple of, give our listeners, I should say, a couple of tips if they're going to start getting their hands in the dirt.
Sure. So I started instantly thinking of what you can do indoors, whether you have a yard or whether you're an apartment, because, you know, I've had apartment balcony gardens that are like, you know, it's possible. So you can do things anywhere. And we've been talking a lot about propagating, like taking your food scraps and growing food from that. So one thing we talked about, celery juice, one of the easiest things that you can start with. And you can get yourself a little bag of soil. You can get seed starter soil or just like a nice indoor potting soil. Okay. And you don't have to go and buy a bunch of planters and containers. Thing is that like most of our stuff comes in hard plastic that's not going anywhere. You know, we have, you know, the big tomato cans that you use to make pasta sauce. I keep those. Those are great little planters that you can use to have on your windows, you know, your windowsills or in your kitchen. Doesn't matter what you use. If you want to get something really cute, you can do that too. But taking your celery, once you use it, cutting the bottom, finding some kind of container. Sometimes I take like the plastic to-go containers. I keep the bottoms of them, fill it with some water so that it's covering the bottom of the celery. Toothpicks, so that you're able to suspend it so that it is able to kind of absorb and it's not, you know, on the bottom of the container. Yep. And you'll notice the celery start to sprout out from the middle.
Yeah.
And then once you got little sprouts, you know, you can put it in the soil in your garden. Or let's say you take your tomato, you know, your tomato can, put soil, and you plant your celery right there in that can. Cover it, just leaving like the little bit of the new leaves. Mm-hmm. Water it, put it in the sun, and you're going to start having celery that you can just cut and use as you need. Another great thing is microgreens, which you can grow easily. And all that is lettuce seeds that you haven't let them get so big. So they're micro. So they're microgreens. So they have lots of nutrients. I have some growing on my windowsill where I took, you know, you get the big lettuces, the living lettuce where it still has the roots. Mm-hmm. I cut the bottom off where I have the roots. I put the bottom root into my garden, or I'll put it in like some water until like the little bits sprout like the celery. Then I have my leaves. Then I take that container, cut it in half. It's like 2 clamshell type things. I put some soil in there and I have lettuce seeds. I sprinkle lettuce seeds, water them, and then they start to come up as little sprouts. And those are microgreens. And you can just take scissors and cut the tops of those. And I put it on all of my food. And it's just like, you know, if you don't have time to make a whole salad, but you're like, I need something green, I need some nutrients, microgreens. And if you go to the store, those little suckers are like $10. So all it is, you know, and it's like a $1 packet of lettuce seeds. You have it. They're so easy. You just got to kind of keep them moist, give them sun. So that's another easy thing. And think about it. It's like from that, you purchase your vegetables once and it's like you're regenerating and regenerating.
Yes.
And I've been really into that. Another thing that's really easy for a lot of people is, an herb garden, or herb garden, as we say in South Africa. We pronounce the H there. But so herbs are a very easy thing to have, where you just basically have to keep monitoring the water and the sun, but you can choose anything. Like I have like a pot, and I'll stick like 3 or 4 of them in there. So I'll have like, oregano and some chives and some basil, or, dill. And with those, you can either buy the starters or you can get the seeds. And it's really up to you. If you're going to get the seeds, you got to start it like now.
Okay.
You got to do it like early spring.
Okay.
But another example of something, if you don't want to get the seeds, and you could literally go right now in your fridge and start a garden with your food scraps. So another thing I have on my windowsill is, you get those green onions.
Mm-hmm.
You take the green onion. So, you cut where you want to be using it from, but leave that bottom of the bulb where you have the roots. And I put it in like a cute little glass of water. And then it's just, quickly, like within days, you have a whole nother stalk that has grown out of it. And that I have like the same 3 green onions that I've had for like 2 months. And I just clip when I need it. And they're in a glass of water that's, on my windowsill with my herbs and everything. I need some green onions when I make my shrimp and grits, or I need whatever. Just snip it right there, and you might have those in your refrigerator right now. And we're either throwing away that root or we're composting that root. It can just keep being regenerated. And that's the amazing part of nature.
You're teaching me, and I'm so excited, and I love it, and I can't wait to share. And if you have questions, you have to follow her, Laura Reed Music. You have to follow her. We'll share her links. She's linked on all of our promos. Before we let you get out of here, a couple more questions. One, I wanted you, if you will, you talk about regenerating. I'd love for you to share your walk with sobriety, because so many people, Laura, right now are in situations that are different and new, and maybe their sobriety is being challenged. But I would love if you would share that with people, because I think it's so incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, I think I battled with it. I realized that, and, I gave you some of my backgrounds, Irish, Native American, all these other things. It was like alcohol has plagued my family for generations. And in South Africa, it's so accepted. It really is. I mean, it's hard to imagine, but when I was 7, 8 years old, we're having red wine with a little bit of Sprite in it, or we're having beer shandies. It's just, it wasn't taboo. But as I got older and older, I realized that my relationship with alcohol was just super unhealthy. And by my late 20s, it didn't take much for me to black out. And after having a couple scary experiences where I didn't know how I got home, I didn't know what happened to me, all these things, and it's funny, I had normalized it, and I think so many of us do, because even when I went sober, I had so many girlfriends who were like, why aren't you drinking? Because I decided to go sober. It was like holiday time, like Christmas time. So it's in 2018, and so I remember I was going to all these Christmas parties, and it was like, I really decided to do this right before New Year's, everything. And that's just how I am. I was like, nope, focus, discipline. I got this. And I haven't had a sip to drink since like December 17th, whenever it was. But everybody was asking me, why are you like, you seem totally in control. I'm so surprised. And I was like, no, I'm an alcoholic. And they're kind of like, well, why do you say that? And I was like, because I would drink and I would black out, or this and that. And they'd be like, well, it happens to me all the time. And I'm like, I'm just going to fix my own hair.
Yeah.
And I was just like, well, and I wouldn't say anything. I would just be there, and then they'd be like, oh, maybe that isn't healthy. And I'm like, I think it's dangerous, especially as a woman. I've been traveling alone by myself for a long time, and I've had scary experiences. I was in Beirut, and someone attacked me in a bathroom stall. Next thing I know, I'm being choked. And, and it was like, I had been up partying, with everybody that I was traveling in Lebanon, the country, not Lebanon, Tennessee. I have to, people are like, Lebanon, Tennessee. I'm like, no, the country. Everyone I was with, and it was crazy, because obviously I freaked out, and I got away. I had to literally fight to get out. But that was like there was a couple of different experiences that led to this decision of like, oh, I wonder what would have happened if I was completely sober. What if I wasn't? You know, it was just you go through this, it's this trauma, you know, and I realize now, like, I have trauma from these experiences, but I wouldn't always remember, but I'd hold the trauma in my body. And so like a big part of getting sober for me was looking at why I was letting myself get that reckless, especially when it goes against everything I'm about, because I eat very healthy. I take good care of myself, but then I could throw back a handle of whiskey, you know, and maybe that's part of just being this like musician gypsy my whole life. It was accepted. And I was always the only woman with a bunch of men, you know, out drinking people. And I was kind of proud of it, you know, it was like, yeah, I can do this. And now I look back and I'm like, I was just poisoning myself and putting myself in some dangerous situations. So that helped me make the decision of going sober. You know, it's just like, hey, like, I can make this decision and I want to be healthy, you know, on all levels. And part of me getting sober and staying sober was like looking at my traumas, you know, like really like doing that work. There was an amazing book called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's about PTSD. And that was like a very life-changing moment where I'm reading this book and I'm like, oh, I'm just reading about his clients and I'm not like these people. And then I'm reading these stories from some of these women that were clinically had PTSD. And I was like, oh, I relate to that. Oh, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, do I have PTSD? Like, am I, you know, and it was triggered by alcohol, you know, and it was like the fact that I was no longer making memories. Like literally I have people tell me that I would record songs. I'd be in the studio, I'd be talking to people. The next day I'd hear the song and I'm like, where did this song come from? And I'm literally panicking because I have zero memory of writing a song, singing it, recording it. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
So, and everyone was like, oh, that's so awesome, you know, and that's the problem in my industry. And right when I went sober, I did an interview with No Depression, and I was terrified to do this interview because I was like, look, I just got sober, but it's like, you know what? I want to have an honest conversation about this. And I was like, it's too glamorized in our industry. I was like applauded for the fact that I was able to produce blackout drunk. It was like as if I was just even, you know, even more worthy, or like, you know, oh, like, yeah, she's like really a musician because she can, you know, drink a bunch of tequila and then go and record a song. Meanwhile, I was terrified, you know, and enough of that will scare you.
Yeah.
And so I was scared, you know, I was like, what is it going to take? Am I going to, you know, like let myself disappear, you know? So it was very drastic for me, and not everyone has those situations. For me, there were some drastic things that I had to change my life, and I'm so happy I did. And, you know, my husband will still have some wine. I'm still around people drinking and partying. And it's like, I don't care what they do.
That's okay.
I'll make sure that they have a glass of water if they need it. And I end up momming people if they need it. You know, I'm like, come here, baby, you know. And I feel comfortable in that role. You know, I feel comfortable now in my skin. I'm not missing it. And it's been good for me because I realized that I had just been sweeping a lot of stuff under the rug. And even though maybe I didn't drink all the time, or no one ever really saw me lose control because I was so good at keeping it together, you know, I would keep it together and then I get in my Uber and just like pass out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, man, that's not a good routine. But it's like, you know, you can only sweep it under the rug for so long. And I was like, man, I have a lumpy rug. I got to clean. I don't want to have a lumpy rug.
I might use that. I don't want to have a lumpy rug. Like when we do the promotion for this, like you want to know what a lumpy rug is and you want to fix it. Can I ask you another question? So much of what we talk about in the movement is self-care and intentions. And you told me about what you do to stay grounded. And part of that's being in the garden. What is something, Laura, that you're focused on this week, and intention that our viewers might be able to take away from this Sunday conversation and implement into their week this week?
An intention?
Something you're focused on this week.
Yes. So for me this week, I have been really thinking about and today especially, today is the first day that I feel like I'm going out and working again, because I'm making a music video. And since the reset, it's like the things, my priorities that maybe before I'd be so focused about, like, oh, my hair, my makeup, these different things. Like this time around, I'm like, okay, what is my goal? What is my intention? What do I want the impact of this art to be? And, where's my place in the world? Like, how can I have, which this is a question I've asked myself before, but I'm really feeling it these days. And I think that, everything, we all feel so raw right now. And there is so much uncertainty. And so it's like really setting that intention or asking that question of like, what do I want my impact to be in the world? Because we've been given this gift of a reset. We really have. So many people have lost their jobs and it's terrible, but a lot of them are reevaluating, did that job even make sense for me to do?
Yes.
Like I really, and I've been rock bottom, and rock bottom is a scary place to be, but it's also an empowering place to be, because you can build whatever you want, and it's like to think about that now, like with this reset, a lot of places are starting to open up, and we're going to be pushed and coerced into just going back to normal and acting like nothing happened. But we cannot forget that something did happen, and it happened within us, and around the whole world. And it wasn't like one country had this and quarantine. The whole world went through this experience together, and it's like, so we have to move forward as they start to open things up, and things go back to normal. It's like really questioning what it is that we want to be doing in the world, how the decisions we make. I think a lot of people are thinking now where their food comes from, where their products come from. Everything's become a lot more localized, and I think that's great. Everyone's now like, I don't care about the things I used to. I just miss my family and my friends. It's like everything's in perspective. So think of ourselves as architects, and we've just been given this blank page, or just been given this, this location, and it's our life, it's the world right now, and we can architect our lives. We can design whatever we want, and I think that's an important, empowering thought to keep like right here. Yeah, especially as things start to open up, but we've like, we've lifted a veil. We see kind of our impact on the world, and I think a lot of us have seen our own lives very clearly. We've had the time to reflect. Staying busy distracts you from looking at your problems. So we haven't been allowed to do that. We've been having to look in the mirror pretty seriously. So I think this next week, actually, for me, I feel like this next week, especially with like, certain states opening back up, it's going to be really important to just be like, okay, like I want to think and have a lot of intention with how I interact with people, with how I'm interacting with the world. Just more than just hygiene. Obviously we're going to have to be wearing masks, and we're going to have to do things differently than we did, but also just like on a human level. Amen. Like if we forgot how important we are to each other, I feel like we've definitely like been reminded of what, of what's important, and that we are part of nature. We're part of the earth, and when we need to be, she will humble us, like you think about the web. We did not make the web. We are a strand in the web.
Yeah. That's so good and so deep and so powerful. And I think that's a beautiful intention for everybody who's watching this podcast to be able to take into their week and the show. I would ask you, I know you're about to go out and shoot a music video, but before you leave, one last question. I'm wearing the shirt in honor of the story, but you have a letter from Prince that is framed and in your living room. And I have taken a picture of it and shared it with like a few people, and they're like, what? Do you have that? And I was like, no, it's my friend's. And so you've got to tell the story of this letter that Prince wrote that is framed and in your living room.
Yes. So he didn't write it to me. He wrote it to George Clinton. And George Clinton had it he just has a collection of so many amazing things. He just is like a walking museum of music and funk and creativity. Being around him in that time period was amazing. And we really bonded. He would, I like I said, it was like I thought I was just coming in to sing some background vocals, and it just turned into so much more. And like now I feel like, I got accepted into this P-Funk family, And he called me Baby Groove. And even when we weren't making music, he's also an artist. He's has like paintings, and he has like a gallery that's attached to his studio in Tallahassee. And he has all these sketchbooks, like everywhere. He's just kind of doodling. He's just constantly just being creative. And he had a ton of them. A lot of them were even in storage. And there was a sketchbook that had like this letter that Prince had wrote him. And we don't even know, he doesn't even remember when it was, but it was when P-Funk had put out some record, and he sent it to Prince. And Prince, to respond, wrote him this beautiful letter, handwritten. And it's so cool because every time there's like the letter I, it's an actual, he drew an I. And it was just talking about like, you know, I heard it, it played, and, you know, like basically like, you're not of this world.
Yeah.
And it was so cool and simple. And you can just like imagine, you're like, how iconic. It's like Prince showing respect to George Clinton, you know, and that like homage. And essentially, I think George was kind of like an impact on Prince. You know, he had been doing it. Prince was a little bit younger and was looking up to those guys. Mm-hmm. And so that's beautiful. And then it was so beautiful to hear George talk about it, because you could just tell he had so much love for Prince and so much respect. And so like I was given this letter. I was given that letter, and then I was also given one of his paintings. And so they're framed. And my friend Andre, he's an artist, and he is like a Prince archivist. He's like obsessed with. He was in my apartment years ago in North Carolina, saw this letter and was like, what is this? I was like, oh, it's a letter that Prince wrote to George Clinton. He's like, is this real? And I was like, yeah. He was like, Laura, why is this not in a frame? This needs to be behind museum glass. And I had it on my desk or something. I can't even remember. It was like with papers, and he was like really mad at me, and literally showed up the next day with a frame and was just like, put this in the frame. And I was like, he ended up framing it for me and was like so exact, and was like trying not to touch it, and was like,
glove.
Was that? And he saw like grease stains. He's like, did you put those on there? I was like, I don't know. He's like, are those Prince's grease stains? I was like, I don't know. But it's just so funny because it's just like, I like to have it in my living room, and it's just kind of subtly mixed between everything else.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like, it's, you know, in a way, it's almost its own little altar, you know, to my musical past. You know, I feel like that was my foundation in a way, was doing this stuff with George and them. It taught me, that was my first time really singing in a studio. And also just like, wow, like that respect, that musical respect. I'll read that letter sometimes and I'm like, oh, that's what it's about, man.
That's what
like,
it's about.
Yeah. Oh, it's like such a beautiful moment that was captured.
All right, Laura, you want to take us out with some harmonica maybe?
Sure.
You are amazing. What all instruments do you play?
Well, I consider myself a percussionist because I play everything like a drum, you know. Essentially, I'm not a classically trained musician at all. I've never had music lessons, but if it has strings on it, I can usually figure it out. So guitar, I have some of them behind me, ukulele, bass, banjo, and then harmonica, which a lot of people know me for, which shout out to Lee Oscar Harmonicas. We love you, Lee Oscar. And they are the most amazing harmonicas. I love them. And then also just like random percussion instruments. Oh, and piano.
And piano. I mean,
but it's another percussionist. So it's like my approach to everything is percussion. It's all just to kind of translate and get the song out. However we need to get the song out.
I love it. Would you play some harmonica for us to take us out?
Yeah, I will. Let's see. I'm just gonna mess around.
Okay.
I'm gonna play a G harp.
Okay.
So this is major diatonic, which my harmonica players or those who are curious, you know, I do like cross harping. So if you're playing in G, I would play a C. If you're playing in D, like you're playing D, key of D, I'd play G. So I'll just mess around on this a little bit. And you can imagine just seeing me on the street, you know, 15 years ago.
Yes. Amazing, amazing. Go and find Laura. You'll also be able to find her new band, What Is Lore, and get more information about that. Download songs, everything that's coming, the shows that she will be playing. That once we get out all of this down the road, you'll be able to see her live as well. Make sure you follow her and support her. Also for this show podcast, if you will subscribe. If you will share, if you know somebody that needs any of the messages that she had to talk about, from getting back to earth, to regeneration, to sobriety, to her gardening tips, to really being true to yourself and listening to your soul. Somebody out there needs to hear it. And I always say this, and this is for all of us. We have so much power in our fingertips with technology, and we can help somebody. I said last night on social media, cheer for people enthusiastically, clap loud in your soul, be happy for people. And so you have so much power to be able to grow an artist or grow a book or grow a movement or a podcast or whatever it is that you absolutely love, that somebody else may need to see it. And I have heard, Laura, I know you have many stories of technology where somebody says, I just happened to log on. I just happened to see, they just happened to send this to me. And the most beautiful things have come out of that. And so I just want to say thank you for spending time with me today, Laura. It means so much.
Thank you for having me and holding space. Thank you. It's beautiful. And, I love and respect you so much. And you're making a beautiful impact in the world. So it's an honor to be part of this movement with you, part of this energy.
Thank you, my dear. She's Laura Reed. Go follow her and consume all of her amazing music. Have a great day. And remember to have a fantastic week. Bye, guys.
Yes. Bye.